If you've ever lost someone you love, you know how grief sneaks up when you least expect it. But sometimes, when life cracks you open, it also lets in a light you never saw coming. Stay with me till the end, because what this single dad found during one ordinary visit to his son's grave changed not only his broken heart but the lives of two strangers forever. At Chapter 1, Ethan Reeves never missed a Sunday. Every week, just after dawn, he'd drive the winding country road to St. Mary's Cemetery, a patch of green that smelled like lilacs in spring and damp earth after rain. His son, Oliver, had been gone for 3 years now, taken by an accident so sudden it left Ethan hollowed out, like a house gutted by fire but still somehow standing. He always brought Oliver's favorite toy truck, placing it on the small marble headstone, tracing the letters with a trembling thumb. I'm sorry, buddy, I should have been there. The words fell out of him like leaves in a storm, though no one heard them but the wind. This Sunday was different. A thin drizzle fell as Ethan pulled up, parking under the gnarled oak tree that once shaded him and Oliver on hot days. He spotted something unusual: a young woman kneeling by the next row of graves, her shoulders hunched, her waitress uniform drenched, a small boy clinging to her side. The boy wore a threadbare jacket far too big for him, his tiny hands gripping a single wilting flower. Ethan hesitated, torn between his own grief and a stranger's, but the woman's quiet sobs sliced through the morning fog, and something in his chest ached with an old, familiar pain. He cleared his throat, crunching over fallen branches. "Miss, are you okay?" She flinched, wiping her eyes quickly, as if that might erase the truth of her despair. The boy looked up at Ethan with wide, hollow eyes. "I'm sorry, we didn't mean to bother you," she whispered. Ethan knelt beside them. "Bo Broken Bar, who are you visiting?" She motioned to a fresh grave, the dirt still raw and uneven. "My mom," she said, voice cracking. "She was all we had." The boy leaned his cheek on her arm, too young to understand, yet old enough to know that something in the world had gone terribly wrong. Ethan didn't know what to say. What could he say? He offered her his handkerchief. She took it with shaking fingers. "I'm Sarah," she said, almost embarrassed by her tears. "This is Eli." "Yeah, Broken Bar, I just don't know what to do. I work nights at the diner but it's not enough. We don't have anywhere to go now." Broken Bar. Her words faded into the drizzle. Ethan's throat tightened. He saw a glimpse of his own shattered reflection in her eyes, and the same desperation he'd felt that first night without Oliver, pacing the kitchen in the dark, not knowing how to breathe without his boy's laughter echoing down the hallway. They sat in silence, three broken people huddled among the dead. In that moment, something shifted inside Ethan, a fragile flicker of purpose, buried beneath the rubble of his grief. He didn't know what he was supposed to do yet, but he knew he couldn't just leave her there. If you've ever watched a single candle light up a pitch-black room, you'll know exactly how Ethan felt as he looked at Sarah and Eli and realized just maybe the pieces of his heart still had work left to do in this world. Chapter 2. A week later, Ethan found himself at that same gravesite, but this time, he didn't come alone. After that rainy morning, he'd driven Sarah and Eli to the diner where she worked. The linoleum floors cracked, the coffee burned, but the owner let them stay past closing so she could wipe down counters and refill salt shakers. When Ethan offered to help, Sarah refused at first, a pride tangled with fear. But as days passed, so did the walls she'd built to protect herself from more disappointment. Ethan learned how Sarah's mother had worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat, how Sarah dropped out of college when Eli was born because the father disappeared before the ink on the ultrasound dried, how she sometimes slept in the booth after a double shift, Eli curled beside her under her apron, and how her mother's sudden death, a heart attack in her sleep, left Sarah with a mound of medical bills and nowhere to go. Ethan started coming by the diner every evening, at first, just for coffee, then, for conversation, then, because it felt less like charity and more like family. He'd fix the loose door hinge, stock the shelves with groceries he pretended were extras from the pantry, slip a few dollars under her napkin holder. He'd bring Eli little toys, just like he used to do for Oliver. And every Sunday, the 3 of them would visit their graves together as sons, her mother's planting fresh flowers, telling stories, letting the breeze carry their whispered regrets into the sky. One evening, after closing, Sarah sat across from Ethan in the corner booth. Eli snored softly, wrapped in Ethan's old flannel jacket. "Why are you doing all this for us?" Sarah asked. Her voice was raw but steady now, a flicker of hope shining through the exhaustion. Ethan stared into his coffee, seeing his son's reflection in the swirl of cream. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I think a broken bar maybe. I'm trying to fix something I can't fix. I couldn't save Oliver, but I can help you. I want to." Sarah's eyes filled again, but this time, her tears were different, not just grief but gratitude, heavy and light at the same time. "No one's ever stayed this long," she said. "They always leave when it gets messy." Ethan reached across the sticky table, took her trembling hand in his. "Well, I'm staying," he said. "We're all a little messy, but we don't have to be alone." When Ethan went home that night, he stood in Oliver's old room, the one he hadn't touched since the funeral. He pulled the toy trucks from the shelf, the baseball glove, the drawings on faded construction paper. He packed them gently into a box for Eli, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt the suffocating weight in his chest. He's just a little as if Oliver, somehow, was there beside him, nudging him forward. In the months that followed, Sarah and Eli moved into Ethan's guest room. The diner's owner gave Sarah more hours, then offered her the manager's position when he retired. Eli started kindergarten with a backpack too big for his shoulders and a grin that could melt the coldest heart. On Sundays, the three of them still visited the graves, not just to mourn but to remember, to thank, to promise they'd keep carrying the light. And if you'd passed by St. Mary's Cemetery on one of those mornings, you'd have seen them: a single dad who thought he'd lost everything, a waitress who thought she was alone, and the little boy who reminded them both that love doesn't end at a grave. Sometimes, it's just waiting for you to kneel down in the rain, look into a stranger's eyes, and say, "Hey, I'm not leaving." Not this time.